So I would like to request my colleague, this is our representative to the country, and maybe she can also add a bit of her own observations to the mission. Over to you. I'm sure they would like to hear your voice too. It's as much your press conference also.
I'll just be brief. I think, as you all know, the past, since mid-April, it's been a real struggle for the country to receive South Sudanese who are fleeing the conflict in Sudan. And I want to repeat really, I think the coordination we've had with the government at all levels, national, state and local, has been really good. And we continue with this struggle. The situation in Rank, as you know, where we have been getting really on average 2,000 people a day arriving since mid-April, is very, very difficult. You know that Rank is pretty cut off. There are no roads. So the big priorities that we have with other partners, the government, IOM and other humanitarian partners, is how do we help people to move out of Rank? And that is very, very challenging. The outlook we've got on Sudan at the moment does not lead us to believe that the situation is going to get any better anytime soon. So frankly, we're probably looking at the same number of arrivals every day, 7 days a week, until the end of the year. It is the most likely scenario at this stage. So that's really the emergency phase of the response that everybody is struggling with. And of course, you know, from Rank, then the nearest practical place to move a lot of people is Malakal. But you all know the problems in Malakal, and so then the challenge becomes, okay, how do we move people from Malakal to Bo, to Juba, to Unity State? That will remain the bulk of the emergency response, making sure people are received. And of course, the other problem is that they arrive in Rank in a state that's getting worse and worse the more the conflict in Sudan goes on. So we're seeing people arriving in Rank that are malnourished. They've been in Khartoum, there's no food in Khartoum, they've been walking for a number of days. And so the people arrive, South Sudanese and refugees, arrive in Rank already in a very, very bad state, and it's getting more and more complicated the longer the conflict goes on. There's also an outbreak of measles in Sudan, so that's another dimension. But once we've dealt with that emergency phase, of course, the second question, and that's really been the focus of Ambassador Afe's mission, is okay. So we do everything we can to receive them in Rank and move them out to communities. But then what happens when they go back to their communities, right? And you all know that many of the South Sudanese who were in Sudan tend to come from Upper Nile, from Unity State, from Greater Bahr el Ghazal. And these are also the states that are very affected by the conflict in Sudan, because as you know, the food supplies pipeline comes from Sudan for these states. So this is why we're looking at the whole solutions. And although this is a really big crisis, we also want to look at it as an opportunity. Because in a way, the crisis in Sudan can help us to focus the world's attention on the fact that South Sudan needs support and solution for these communities that are receiving large numbers of people arriving. Knowing that, of course, at the same time that we have the conflict in Sudan, we know that we have also a lot of South Sudanese coming back from Uganda, and that tends to be more obviously in Eastern and Central Equatoria. So there's a lot of work, but we want to hope that this really very big crisis in Sudan, we can turn this also for an opportunity for South Sudan.
Wonderful. Okay, and with that, we will turn over to questions. So we will start in the back. Please introduce yourself and your efforts.
Okay, my name is Sandro. I work for Shield Service. In your understanding, you did mention that you might need funding to cater for the returnees. Earlier yesterday, the humanitarian ministry and the IOM in the coordination meeting said they are projecting about 500,000 people towards the end of the year. How prepared is the UNHCR to receive that number? And how much do you need to respond to that?
Okay. Ask 3 questions.
Should we take another few?
Yes, my name is Simon Lay. I work for the Dawn newspaper. My question to Ambassador Afi is, given the fact, I don't know whether the situation in Sudan is the latest that has caused people fleeing either third country. I don't know how to call it, other citizens who are in the Sudan running to their own country, the South Sudanese running back to their home, and elsewhere. So how do you compare the situations of the refugees that are coming to South Sudan with the ones that are found elsewhere in the region? I want you to tell us the comparison of that situation between Uganda and Kenya and the latest in South Sudan. The next question to the country rep, I wanted to know already the estimate for refugees in the country was roughly around 300,000. But now, with some refugees coming, what is the latest estimate that you have in the country? And how is the situation of the refugees? The estimate from the government is saying over 170,000 have come home, of which 91% are South Sudanese. How many exactly? If we say 9%, I don't know whether it will be good. How many do you have currently?
Okay, maybe.
Okay, should we take one more? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for inviting us. My name is Nicola Mulim, and I work for the BBC World Service. Before asking a question, would you really tell us when will the Global Forum take place, the refugee Global Forum? I have not mentioned when it will take place. Coming to my question, I would ask one or two questions. In your opinion, what do you think is the direct impact of the Sudan conflict on South Sudan and other countries in the region? Since the conflict has entered 4 months, what is the direct impact for South Sudan specifically, in Libya and neighboring countries? And I'm asking now, what is UNHCR doing practically? Help these people relocate from the transit camps, if you call them like that. I hear there are many people still stranded. The situation is not good. So what are you doing with your partners to make sure these people are relocated to their respective homes accordingly? Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Those are all very useful questions, and thank you for asking them. Question number one, in terms of the projected number, we also think that the projected number, if on the minimum it's 2,000 a day, by the end of the year, you can imagine what that number can be. And that's only on the minimum. Sometimes it can even be more than 2,000. But on average, we think it's about 2,000 so far. And if the war continues to persist, then I think it's natural that many people will want to seek safety elsewhere. And South Sudan happens to be one of the countries of choice. So there's that expectation of towards the end of the year, as you have already said with the humanitarian minister and the other colleagues like IOM, of about 500,000. So that number is significant, 500,000 people by the end of the year, together with already existing pressure we have of the internal displacement in the country. And we as UNHCR, the first thing, of course, is to create global alert that this is a situation that requires the solidarity of all. We know that the great majority of people who are returning back are South Sudanese. But we also wish to acknowledge that South Sudan government and South Sudanese people will require the solidarity of all of us, the international community, to confront the difficulties that can also be associated with the number of people who are coming. So part of the reason why I'm here myself, they say seeing is believing, is to come and see for myself. And through a medium like yours, explain to the global community that what we require is urgent support to confront the situation and to make it less painful for those who have returned, some of who have returned with nothing. I mean, in a situation of war, people live with their lives. Sometimes they live alone, everything that they had in terms of what they could carry. And as the representative has said, they trek for long periods of time to reach the border itself. The movement itself is so difficult. So it's a very painful thing. In terms of the region, and to do a comparison, first of all, I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the countries in our region who have kept the South Sudanese refugees, among others, in their countries, in the camps in their countries, allowing them to thrive, to prepare themselves as one day to return home. I have spoken to many of the South Sudanese in most of the countries in the region, and I can tell you almost all of them would like to come back home one day. Nobody wants to become a refugee forever. Home is always the best. The thing is that we must help the government of South Sudan and the people of South Sudan in creating positive conditions for people to have the confidence to return back, and for those ones inside the South Sudan also to have to feel that basic services are available for them to be able to grow as citizens. In terms of the GRF, because I'll allow some of the questions to be answered by our rep, the Global Refugee Forum will happen this year, the first week of December 2023. And it's a forum that is expected to galvanize international solidarity, support host countries, both political and material, for all the countries that continue to host refugees. South Sudan, with all the challenges, continue to host over 300,000 refugees here. It's not that the country does not host refugees. In fact, you have a significant number of refugees here in South Sudan, but also we have South Sudanese who are returning back from the region, who are former refugees but now coming back home, and hopefully that they can be able to reconstruct their lives. So we saw what we saw in Malakal. At least if that is an indication of the challenges that people are facing, it's very significant and requires urgent attention. And I would like our rep to tell you exactly what UNHCR office here is doing, together with other partners that are available to help. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I think the first thing to say on this is that that's the thing. It's not a UNHCR response. And the government, the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs, has been very, very clear from the beginning. These are South Sudanese people coming back. They are the responsibility of the government. So the South Sudan has told us very clearly, we need your support, but the responsibility is ours, which is very positive. In terms of the numbers, we are, I believe, at about 180,000 arrivals today. Of which about 160,000 are South Sudanese who have come back. The rest are refugees. Now, these numbers are what we are catching. There are other people who are probably coming. So 20,000 refugees who have arrived, mostly Sudanese, but also other Eritreans and Ethiopians that were refugees in Sudan, and now they've come here. The majority of them are going to existing camps. So these are the camps in Maban, Apenal, or Jamjang, Ruang administrative area. But we are opening a new camp for refugees in Awil for the ones arriving from Darfur, who are arriving in a really, really bad state. The situation in Darfur, you all know, is really catastrophic. And at the moment, it's very difficult for them to cross into South Sudan. Because just getting to the border in Darfur is very difficult because of the security. So, but we're getting about 100 a day arriving, Sudanese arriving from Darfur, and we're opening a settlement, refugee settlement in Awil for these people. In terms of what we're doing, again, this is not a UNHCR only response, so I just want to explain a little bit who's doing what. The first thing that we've been doing with IOM, UNHCR and IOM are present 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 17 official border crossing points. So the first thing we do is receive people when they arrive at the border. And that implies, first of all, registering them so that we know who they are, etc. But also, a lot of it is really identifying the ones who are in need of immediate assistance, health or unaccompanied children, other cases of women who may have been separated from their family.
So generally, I would like to appeal from here that this war should stop, so that the communities in Sudan, in South Sudan, and all other countries that are affected by the conflict can live normal life. It's not necessary, and I think those ones who are involved in this conflict need to understand that this has to stop as soon as possible.
You did mention that responding to 500,000 people, the UNHCR is prepared. Like, how much do you need?
No, UNHCR is prepared to support, to play its role amongst other partners of South Sudan. And we are only saying that the numbers could be that significant. We are prepared to support with the resources that we have, with the little resources, of course, that we have. And that part of this press briefing is to get solidarity of the international community and donors with the government of the Republic of South Sudan.
But I can add to this. We are currently working, so it's not UNHCR. I really want to be clear. It's not UNHCR. The right question is the country prepared, right? I think that's really the right question. Is the country and the humanitarian partners and the UN supporting prepared? We are right now working on a revision of the emergency plan. We had an emergency plan that went from mid-April to mid-July, end of July, sorry, that called for 96 million, okay? Just for these 3.5 months. We are now working on the revision of that plan to go towards the end of the year. And the budget is something we're still working on at the moment. So that will be out probably within the next 2 weeks. And of the 96 million that we had asked for, from 15th of April until the end of July, we received about 20% of that. 20% of the funds were received. Not UNHCR, everybody, all the partners, the UN, the NGOs, everybody. So it's really important to make that distinction. It's not UNHCR is not prepared, it's in general, all the people working on this response, led by the government, this is what they're going to lead. And hopefully we will have that within the next 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. I think you have enough. Yes.
Take around information, if you could help the conflict in Sudan, how many Sudanese have fled to different parts of the region? Because we are hearing different figures, and you are the right person to tell anything.
You know, it's very difficult to say the number, given that given that the war continues and people continue to flee. So there can never be a number that you can say exact number. The number that we had yesterday, we don't have it today. You see, because this is an ongoing conflict. But in the context of Sudan, we have over 2 million entirely displaced so far. In Sudan. In Sudan alone. And together with a population of already 3 million existing internal displacement before. So if you combine that, you can see how significant the number is. So it's very difficult to act on a question of numbers when a conflict is ongoing and people continue to live. You will understand that, I'm sure.
Okay, I think we'll take one final question, if that's all right. Anyone we have not heard from? Yeah. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you so much. I wasn't just first, but I visited Brian, myself, already in Jordan, and being refugees. So they refuse to register. Sometimes it becomes very difficult to understand because some people don't want to come to South Sudan, and they're just passing by. So some say they want to go to Rwanda, and some say they want to go to Sudan. So they choose where they want to go. We established some camps. I remember I met some people in Guam. The situation I saw in Rangi was that when I was there, camp which was in university, and then it was occupied and people were not trying to shelter outside. Let me hear some challenges in managing these camps, particularly. In Rangi, UNHCR manages them, issues when they come flooding, coming in, because a lot of rain coming. What are the challenges in managing these camps? Because you already had by then refugees, and now many are coming in, refugee shelters.
Yes, yes.
I mean, you know, so Gorom is one of the camps that's just outside Juba, and we have been seeing people arriving in Juba, and that's what I'm saying. Not everybody is, you know, we managed to capture, to get to know at the border. Some people are arriving directly in Juba. So Gorom is one of the camps in Juba. It is true that some refugees, it's possible, will go to other countries, but the majority so far we've seen are staying. Managing the camps, I mean, again, you know, the vast majority, 90% are South Sudanese. So that's why the government said from the beginning, we don't want camps for South Sudanese. It's not right. You know, they're South Sudanese citizens. We want them to live in the communities. Rank is very difficult. One of the biggest challenges in Rank is that it's very remote, as you all know. There's no really any road, and so everything that UNHCR, WFP, IOM, the NGOs, everything that's needed in Rank needs to be flown by air. So that makes the cost of the response really, really, really expensive. Really expensive, crazy expensive. So that's one of the challenges. The other challenge is that you have people who are arriving already in a state where they've been very traumatized, as you can imagine. And as I was saying, more and more malnourished because there's no food in Khartoum. People, there's just no food. There hasn't been for a few weeks. So they already arrive in a very difficult state. And it's very difficult when they arrive in a place like Rank where conditions are difficult to make sure that they don't get worse, they don't deteriorate while they're waiting for transport. The transportation is getting much better now in terms of regularity. At the beginning was really hard because of security. And of course, the other problem that we have is because you have people who are fleeing active conflict, there's a lot of separated families, including unaccompanied children. And so this is something we're really focusing on because there's a lot of risk of families splitting up. When they flee Khartoum, first of all, then during the travel to the border, and then they're in the transit center, usually that's okay. But then they go on boats, and then that's another risk for the family to be separated. So that's one particular area. But generally speaking, being able to have a humanitarian response of that size in a place as remote as Rank is very, very challenging.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies. Thank you.
Again, thank you very much, everyone, for
Let's
coming
go.
here. I will add our copies are released. There is also online.
Yeah.